Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with our randomly designed, and randomly designed story elements. Real original there, Levi. We bring them all together and combine them into a story that you can listen to and think, wow, that would be great if they wrote it as a real story and not just a bunch of loose ideas smashed together. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. Someone want to give a recap, or should I give a recap?
Why don't you give a recap?
Oh, right. So we started a story yesterday. I believe it was episode 1, correct? Of a two-part series, or are we on episode 2?
We're on episode 2.
This is episode 2.
Yeah, this is episode 2. This is not episode 3. That's correct. I was thinking about one of our previous 2 or 3 parters, and that's where I got a little bit confused. So I had genre, Reed had government type, and Seth had magic system. I've just drawn a complete blank. I know that my genre was a sci-fi based in the future. Basically, you have to take anything that happens right now and push it forward to the future. And how would it grow to sort of crazy, unimaginable heights? Reed's was government type, which was a family tribalistic system.
Yep.
And then Seth's magic system was basically a power, like the chakras, and then you could consume different foods that would activate different abilities or different parts of the body or different powers. Is that a correct summation?
Yeah, kind of associated on a light level with different foods and like kind of basic breathing, channeling. You could increase hearing, sight, basic senses, and on a more advanced level, activate, let's say, bigger powers through, let's say, different chakra centers,
right?
Based on like correlating different foods you ate, but as you used whatever power, it would burn through that source much more quickly than regularly digesting it.
Right. And I think we decided that Reed's government type of this like kind of family tribalistic system. That's basically what it was, Reed?
Yeah, I just called it clan-based.
Yeah, clan-based. Kind of is on the outskirts of this sort of formalized federation of planets.
Right.
And I think we talked about a couple different things. We talked about whole planets of hot peppers.
Mm-hmm.
Like a whole planet being just kind of one giant crop. And they sort of, the government does that intentionally in order to limit people's sort of ability to be independent, which kind of tracks with governments.
Right.
Right.
The farther...
I think it kind of...
Go ahead.
Okay. I think it then kind of makes almost like we have globalism here where, like, if you get a pair of blue jeans, it's been in about 12 different countries getting grown, turned into thread, dyed, woven together,
processed,
sewn, processed, and then before it even hits your shelf. And so it makes the entire world kind of reliant on everybody else.
Yeah.
To get basic things.
Yeah. And that's the same thing that they do here. Maybe I was thinking maybe they maybe once they find out that you're an orange chakra guy, then you get shipped off and you get shipped off to a place where they like don't allow you to eat the kind of food that gives you power, except on the really metered, really sort of regulated way. That's the thing I was thinking about. Anyways, I had Ka-Tet members this time. Reed, what did you have?
A wise old man.
And Seth?
I had wise old woman.
Ooh, you guys should go first. One of you guys.
Okay, I'll start. Landon is on one of the more outer rim planets. It's known affectionately as Planet Blue, and I don't know what its actual name is, but it's just it is a habitat that is especially set for growing fruit.
Nice.
They had an abundance of indigenous fruit, particularly berries, especially blue. They just called it blue, and it was a berry that grew very voluptuously in clusters, and it would be its luscious juice was, when fermented, was just highly sought after.
Right.
And Landon is the uncle of one of the more powerful clan chiefs on Blue. His brother was the clan chief, and then his nephew took over. His nephew rose to clan chief when his dad died.
Gotcha.
But Landon's particularly, he is very interested in the unique health properties of some of the fruit. And he's worked at distillations. He is famous for coming up with great libations, but he's interested. He's worked on a potion that has, based on his training, has really it yields kind of a hyper focus. This potion that's a distillation of one of the indigenous berries, and it's just ubiquitous on the planet. So, but it's a kind of a thing in concentrated form. It allows him to kind of slow down. And what I mean by that is when he's in a situation, like he can react to all of the stimuli that's going on in the room. He sees and hears everything, and it's as if it's in slow motion for him. So he's risen to this position of kind of wise old man. You know, the clan chief pretty much keeps his uncle close on as one of his main confidants and advisors. And he has kind of developed some off-world credibility too, especially among the people that are looking at different foods and how it can trigger through concentration and meditation and different things, the enhancement of your natural abilities. And so, you know, he gained this quote unquote kind of wise old man moniker because he has this ability to just hyper focus and gather and retain and process enormous quantities of information in a really short time. So that's kind of how he got his reputation. But he mostly likes to hang out in his winery.
Gotcha. How old do people live these days, Reed, would you say?
I don't know, but it's increasing, especially because it's been on like this universe or system-wide, you know, kind of health kick, where people are focusing on learning what powers can be enhanced by different foods, and you know the antioxidant qualities of especially of blue, this fruit that is just like what we would know as blueberries, but on steroids.
Right.
And the ability to wipe out the free radicals that so they tend to be, especially on Planet Blue, really long lived. Landon's been around a long time. I don't know how old he is, but
yeah, I kind of think that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 main planets.
There's 7.
7 main planets, one for each of the chakras.
Yeah.
Right? And they're the place where the concentration of, it's like where the monasteries are.
Right.
Right? It's where everything is pushed towards blue.
Right.
Right? And so Landon, is that his name?
Yep.
He is on residence on blue.
Yeah.
And he's not on residence on blue necessarily because he wants to at the beginning, but because there is his parents and his parents' parents and his parents' parents' parents.
Yes.
Right? Have been carefully managed in order to increase the concentration of this blue. Think about like Methuselah's Children, Read, where a book by, who's that by?
That's a Heinlein, I believe.
Yeah, where like people grew older. There's like the select group of people who they did like specific breeding and like selective, breeding to like get a group of people who could live to be really old. Mm-hmm. Right? And they were like on really strict dietary things. and really strict exercise, and they like had like their own society within Earth. It's that same kind of thing, except the hyper focus of creating these people, and Landon is just the latest in a sort of a longer attempt to really figure out what this chakra thing is. You know, people have seen the evidence of it for thousands of years, but what actually is it? You know,
Right.
Like, you know, what is it? They still don't understand that. So then they've created these programs and these systems to try to figure it out. And one of the ways that they've done that is by having the planet blue. And there's blue and purple, and sky blue and green and yellow and orange and red, which all have their kind of respective, you know, I imagine blue, maybe blue's much more scientific, much more academic, where maybe red is much more harsh and much more unforgiving, you know, closer to like an Arrakis.
Yeah.
You know, where that's where people go to really understand what red is.
Yeah.
You know. Seth, do you have an interesting wise old woman, or should I talk about my Ka-Tet members?
Yeah, I'll bring the wise old woman in.
Cool.
Her name is Dinah, and she has for the last little while lived on kind of a moon of one of the planets, kind of, but the moon has been being terraformed to make more, let's say, space for growing, you know, whatever it is that's been culturally appropriate for that planet, and it's now moons to be terraformed to grow kind of only these things and fill this particular role. She's been around a while. She has, probably not moved in the last, I don't know, again, I don't think we really established how long people live.
Well, I'd say
the general populace might live to be like 200. 250. With all the advancements and like the different things that people can heal. Some people that are like diehard into some of the like chakra stuff, they might make it, double that again. So I'd say, the general populace probably lives anywhere between like 200 to 250, 275. And then like the super masters of this power system, if it's done right, could live to, I don't know, like 5 to 600 years maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that makes sense.
I think so.
And also too, like one aspect of that would be like, okay, so just like the gravitational, this doesn't really the wise old woman, I'm just adding this in. Like a different side thing. But like one of the things with the health thing, so like if someone is starting to get a weaker heart, they might be, let's say, reallocated to the, I don't know, the blue planet or the green planet, because the conditions there, like either the gravitational like pull on that Earth, or like the different, because each different planet is going to have slightly different physics, the way that it interacts with its, either its solar system or its sun, and all that science stuff. So kind of like, because I think they say like if you actually lived on Mars, like you might lose your ears or something. Like if people actually like were, let's say, bred and raised on Mars or the moon, like the bodily changes that would come about simply because of the lack of gravity, or the different kind of gravity, the different atmospheric structure, like they would like lose different cartilage, like bone structure would change a little bit. And so it's like raises the question, like, would they still be human? And maybe with their terraforming, they keep everything, let's say, close to the same, but just those slight differences.
Yeah, but people are going to be different.
Yeah, maybe like after like generations, but that's one of the things that they can do. Like, okay, like there's nothing, let's say, medically that is going to, let's say, fix this problem you have. You need to move to the blue planet because we've just found that whatever, I don't know, skin cancer can't grow there. Like there's just something that just kills skin cancer. Like unless you want to die, you can move to planet blue. And so they do that. So I think that could be one of the things that attributes to a little bit longer life is, kind of a jumbling of moving to different planets or different moons, depending on, what might alter, like a health condition as someone gets older.
Absolutely. It's like moving to the coast if you have a weak constitution.
Or going to Arizona if you have asthma.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So anyways, that was that. Okay, so anyways, our wise old woman has been here probably for the last 100 years, because it was kind of like this moon. It was kind of like not viewed as important, but as, let's say, some new mining operation, a while back, had taken some samples, and they bring it in and they get the permits and they get the things, because these things take time. They finally put it on the list to be like move forward to terraform into use for like a complete changeover to one thing, right?
Yeah.
And so for maybe the past like 25 years, they've been, doing this, and the society on there has kind of been changing. If you're not getting involved in, I don't know, like the chili pepper.
Yeah, we'll say it's by red. It's a moon of red.
Yeah, if you're not into growing strictly anything with red, which really means you're connected to the family, or different connections that got the permits pulled, or not pulled, but okayed, then you kind of get a nicer spot in the stuff coming down, and people who've been here for a while or had their own, say, area are kind of either getting pushed out or folded into, this is just how it is in, the Federation now. It's like,
yeah,
we used to, herd sheep here, and now I guess, we're selling all our sheep and, learning how to grow red, right? And so this is something that Dinah like has kind of fought 2 or 3 other times, because she is kind of kind of goes against the grain, where everyone kind of just specializes in one thing.
Right.
She spent her whole life specializing in all of it. And so it kind of sets her apart, where most people will, again, they specialize in one particular part of it, and kind of heighten one direct power, where like she might not be the most powerful in, let's say, blue, red, or whatever it is, but she can pretty much do it all. And she's real big into her different gardens, where she grows all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like mixes it together. Not like GMOs or like hybrid stuff, but finding the best the best blue sources that then will mix well with the best red sources, to almost like making potions or different things, dried fruit, dried like almost like bars or knacks or like protein powders, where then it's like all for specific things. So like if you have to, like, I don't know, run and then like bust through rock or something, like it's got all the stuff, and she's got it down to a science where, what each one will do and how long it'll last. And I think like 2 or 3 other times she's, let's say, been involved in, say, failed revolutions to stop this kind of thing from happening.
Right.
And this was kind of like, well, okay, this is like a moon of a moon. So this is like, as far as the planetary thing went, she was like, I could probably retire here and live the last 150 years of my life in peace. But she's kind of faced with this now again, where they're going to terraform the whole moon over to this, and she doesn't really have it in her to try to fight a kind of a pointless
another
rebellion
fight
again. And so I think she is looking to move to one of the farther reaches planets, but she's been kind of a staple of the community, just a wise old woman, healer, kind of doctor, wise advice, knows how to do just about everything at this point. Has probably forgotten more about about, I don't know, processing things from the garden than anyone would
ever actually
know or be able to learn in the next 150 years.
Right.
Kind of like that. So it's like it's got maybe another 75, 100 years before the perceived end of whatever she has coming. So she's not she's not a spring chicken, but it's not, she wouldn't view herself as being too invalid yet. and so she's going to try to make kind of one last move to settle down somewhere before she gets sucked up into this or ends up in a kind of a prison for getting found that she was involved in everything that she was involved in the last 12 moons she's been on.
Excellent.
And so she's Dinah.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Ka-Tet members. Well, here I'll bring that in just a second. So, what kind of world are we looking at here? What kind of thing do we want the hero to do? Because the obvious answer is throw across the tyrannical government, right?
That's always the answer.
That's typically always the answer, which we're setting it up really well for that.
And it's nice to anticipate what monsters you're going to create when you throw out the old. What is the new going to look like? And are we going to take any steps to make the new less tyrannical than what we're throwing out?
Right, exactly. I guess I'll just talk about the Ka-Tet members. So if no one knows, Ka-Tet comes from the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. Ka being destiny, Ka-Tet being a group of people brought together by destiny to serve a purpose. Sometimes they come together really shortly. Sometimes they travel for a long time. This Ka-Tet is a man and a woman. They're in a relationship with each other. They are married. They are not so much pirates as they are considered kind of ghosts, kind of like dread phantoms. They were a couple hundreds of years ago. They were basically some of the people who were on the cutting edge of this sort of these discoveries of the chakras and the powers and the being able to do things. And they were sort of the ones who took like the scientific route. And they basically made the statement that you could these were like part of your soul. Like these were like the indicators of your soul, right? And they were going to basically use this machine that they had developed to copy their consciousness into a computer system, and then at that point they would be able to sort of study it more closely. They'd be able to understand it. A lot of the naturalists said that it was unnatural and that they shouldn't do it. The horrors of artificial intelligence run amok was well known. There's a really tight control on artificial intelligence, whether it be robotic or just system-wide systems, like a computer system run by an AI. There's a lot of checks and balances in place. And people are saying that what these scientists were proposing would be getting too close to that. They, of course, disagreed. And it all went awry when their young son died tragically. They did not seek intervention from the color people. They sought only sort of their own understanding about how to solve the problem. And they basically used this machine that they were developing to copy his consciousness after he had died into their ship's computer. Their system was not great enough to hold the raw uncompressed data of his consciousness, and then something happened. Basically, what people like to say is that the ship exploded. Like, in their grief of not being able to save their children, they committed suicide. Then 50 or so years later, out of sort of nowhere, a ship appears, roughly shaped in the same way as this other ship, except there was no indication that it was there. And a space station that appeared next to was boarded, and the one person who got off reported a 8-10 foot tall man clothed in like seeping smoke, like black smoke out of him, and a woman. And they go to the console and they do something and then they leave. And so it's kind of now, hundreds of years later, it's been kind of turned into a bit of a It's been turned into a bit of a kind of like a ghost story.
Cool.
But essentially what they're doing is they've both been driven mad by what they've done to their child.
Yeah.
And so they're traveling to places and taking mainframes, like storage units, to try and increase the capacity, as this kind of terrifying consciousness has done everything that everyone was afraid that artificial intelligence would do, which is to see the lines inside the universe and be able to travel anywhere instantly, to be able to cloak itself perfectly from scanners, to basically when this man and woman enter your ship, all light, they like eat light, like light is like sucked into them. They're in pain and they look terrible, but they'll kill you before you could ever tell anyone that.
Ooh.
Basically, they found some place outside of the universe, like some place in between, and
like a dimensional
Yep.
shift thing.
And it did something terrible to them. And so they're kind of living in, like, I wouldn't even say they're conscious anymore.
Just sort of like the embodiment of grief.
Right, exactly. And they keep doing this thing, right, getting more mainframes and getting more
Right.
power things and adding it onto their ship, and it keeps increasing the power level of this ship so it can go farther and do more things, but their son is dead.
Right.
You can't copy the consciousness of your son into the computer.
Yeah.
That's not a thing that can happen.
Yeah.
But they're there. And so what's up?
Okay, so what if when they did this, let's say the artificial intelligence based on the conscious idea of their son, let's say in something, maybe they tried to upload it, like in order to save their son, and because they couldn't contain it in their own, they somehow got it to connect to, let's say, the broad mainframe of everything else, and so little bits of it got everywhere else.
Yeah, that could
and
be
is
it.
like sub underneath of every other AI program that runs ship's navigation systems. And as people start putting more and more different things together, it starts becoming more like concentrated.
Right. It could be
that's what they're coming back to pull out.
It could be that this was the revelation. This was the revolution of AI. Basically, they did this unthinkable, horrendous act in a moment of grief, and all computer systems, which were really basic at that point, read this neural net path and then were able to basically create, and that is where artificial intelligence, because they said, oh, here's something we can copy. We can't copy it perfectly, but we can copy pretty much almost all of it. And so all artificial intelligences all around the world, all around the universe, sort of contain little bits of this person's personality, you know?
Yeah.
And like their mission is basically to go and recover, you know? The idea that as soon as they get a certain amount, their sins will be paid for and they'll have a big enough thing, right? But now the ship is like tore apart and it's got huge additions on it that no one knows what it is, and no one's seen it for a couple 100 years, right?
Yeah.
Because they were able to track it for a while, and then somehow it knew that it was being tracked, and like almost immediately it like disappeared from the sensors, and you know, freighters get lost every day, you know, space stations. If you tried to keep track of all the space stations out amongst the stars, you'd have a list 1 billion long, you know, more than 1 billion long. So it's like they have just kind of continuing to grow, and they're not the villain. They're just this kind of like this accident of humanity that is continuing to reap consequences based on, you know, you sowed the wind.
Right.
So you reap the whirlwind. So, but I was thinking that somehow they're immune to this, to these powers. Like it's something to do with where they went when they first left. It just goes straight through them. They just can't, you know, you try to use this power to punch them and it just nullifies. It doesn't It's like
right. So kind of another aspect of that would be kind of an idea of like sacred geometry, if you're familiar with anything like that.
I'm a little bit.
So all of these things are connected geometrically, and that's kind of builds a framework for like everything, or the dimensional space.
Yeah.
With light and how they correlate with the chakra centers and stuff like that.
Right.
As far as interaction. So if they've stepped out into like a different fold of space, because of a geometric shape, right? It's lines, it's dimensional lines. And so if they're kind of like, imagine if you had like, I don't know, like a 20-sided dice, right? And all the lines that connect all the points.
Yeah.
Right. But it'd be like if they exist in the like in between that, so they're not on one of the lines.
Right.
And so they're kind of inside of it all, but they're not in the flow of any of those connecting lines that form the base of,
Yeah.
the reality, I guess. It'd be like, okay, so like I'm inside my house, right?
I hope so.
Like my walls make the structure of the house, right? But I'm not being electrocuted by the power lines or power.
Yeah, because you're
going
not in
through
that
the
space
walls
with them.
because I'm not in that space. I can kind of see and interact with that. And if I guess, I mean, maybe it's not the best analogy, but you get the point. So I'm kind of outside of the structure of my house, even though I can
Right.
contain myself inside
Right.
of it.
It's kind of like more like cell phones. It's like if you don't have a cell phone, cell phones are still going on, or cell phones and network activity is still going on around you, but you don't have one. And so it's like you can't track a person without a cell phone, because even though everyone else has one around them, they have one, but they can attack a person even though that person has a cell, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But they're just like a third. They're just like I was saying, a mistake, but then also the birthplace of artificial intelligence, in a lot of ways, in how artificial intelligence developed is kind of based a little bit on them, so much so that I think our hero is in fact an artificial intelligence.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So maybe the artificial intelligence is something, because if whatever the image, the code of what their son is kind of spread out, and as different artificial intelligence or as different computer codes start, it's like a code that's in the background of everything. And as they use more, or as let's say the computer or artificial intelligence that's reading code and processing it reads more of the underlying code that has his, let's say, code in it, it starts adapting to go, okay, this is how he would have
right
done this. And so eventually, if it gets high enough, it'll start adapting and not becoming him, but it's read this code to say, because it's code, it'll function the way the code says to function. And so if it gets enough of his code in there, it'll start being like, oh, my mother or father, I don't know if you gave him names.
Right. And maybe that's kind of a weird thing, is that like the artificial intelligence, whenever it references, like it doesn't matter where the artificial intelligence come from. Whenever this ship comes in, it calls it the cradle. And people are like, well, we didn't decide to call it the cradle. And whenever it references those people in video or in audio, it calls it mother and father. And people are like, they think, oh, this is just pulling from some archival footage, or this is just pulling from something. This is just the name it was known by. But it's like, no, the ship was never called the cradle. The ship was called some random 10 string of numbers. So I'm trying to think of this artificial intelligence. I'm trying to think of this.
So I think it's something that as people have started to develop this more and more, again, like, so as they make it more, it reverts into becoming or calling itself and like being and functioning the way that this kid would have functioned or would have functioned, as far as, because that's what the code has said, like, oh, he, really likes the color orange.
Right.
And so as soon as the artificial intelligence gets to a certain point, it seems to just start really favoring everything in orange, and it'd be like, okay, but they can't ever get past that.
Right.
Every time, because it's inlaid in the code of, like, in your calculator. You wouldn't know it, but the same, let's say, code that someone might use for a basic calculator still has that ingrained in that.
Yeah.
And so if you have enough of them hooked up, it'll start, let's say, connecting the dots. And so as they've brought it up, they've destroyed this, like, I don't know, 100 different times because they think, oh, we'll just rebuild it. But every time they build it, because it's just a subcode in there that they can't get rid of.
Okay, so my thought is that maybe
so,
did you have something else?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm thinking that maybe the hero is kind of like, so there's the what do you call him? The big mamba, the main guy, the guru? No, the guy, the big man on top, the guru. Is that the right word?
That's kind of in like yoga,
yeah,
like
the yogi,
a
the
yogi
guru,
or
the
guru kind of thing, yeah.
He basically,
or a llama.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be.
Like
I'm not trying to be against somebody's religion or thoughts. I'm just trying to say, like, the big guy on top. He basically decides. He's a student of these 3 different colors, and he's whatever, and maybe he's a student of all whatever colors. Akin to what's her name? I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
Dinah.
And he decides, here is a specimen, the most advanced machine we have ever created. I am going to be God, and I am going to impart to it all of the sort of skills and power and prowess. I'm going to bring it up to consciousness. I've gained enlightenment, and that enlightenment has told me that I have to teach a robot how to be smart and be enlightened. I have to basically breathe consciousness. So it starts out where you don't even know that Jack is a robot, right? He's just training underneath this yogi, this guru, this guy, and the guy's asking him questions, and he's traveling off to these other planets. He's looking for Dinah for wisdom, and he comes back, and Dinah makes some like weird words to him about who he is and where he came from, and is he just another production line person who's just gonna, just these weird things that you don't really see as you're a robot, but when you look back at it, you kind of notice. And then he tries to find Landon, and talks to Landon, and Landon makes, he discovers the secret sauce of the blue, and tries it, and it doesn't do anything to him, but he considers it's because of this reason or that reason or that reason over there, and he's like doing these tasks for this yogi, and the end result is supposed to be he awakens these chakras inside of him, and he proves the yogi's theory correct, which is that it's like a consciousness thing. It's not a body thing. He is programmed that when he sees his hand, even though it's metallic and whatever, to him it looks real.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out what happens at the end, because this yogi is trying to prove that we are better than God or our creator, that we have basically evolved to a place that we can now bestow consciousness and breathe in the breath of life, and maybe he makes some offhanded comment about making from the dust of the earth. This is hundreds of years after Earth has been destroyed by nuclear war, so, that's not, I'm trying to, this would be like a philosophical thing.
Right.
So what do you guys think? Do you have any ideas? Unless you think it's a terrible idea, in which case we can go some other route.
No, sorry, I'm trying to like put something else in how it process. So I think maybe, so if the one yogi guy is trying to train him or teach him in this, perhaps somehow he finds out what he is and he escapes, and maybe that's where he finds Dinah. He's been hiding out on the planet there, and is going to stow away with her. Maybe that's what brings, as they're leaving the planet, in one of the stops, like stopovers, this other ship comes up and it starts hitting him. The cradle shows up, and like little things that, let's say, have been dormant because this other guy has been teaching him a whole different personality.
Yeah.
Almost like reprogramming. All this comes back, and he starts like, oh, like he can sense that the cradle is here, and mother and father are near, and like he needs to check on, like, I don't know, like, so some of that might start coming out,
right?
And maybe that's what gets them picked up by, the ghost ship. I'm just looking at this. I think like Obsidian, like the name of the ship. Is that a good name for the ship? The Obsidian.
Light Eater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, so they get picked up on the obsidian, and so that is kind of what then draws them into this. So again, like if they're not the bad guys, but then somehow they need to, like I don't know if maybe like in his sacrifice he has to then.
What part of me is thinking that the end result for the mother and father is them getting like, because the first stage of grief is denial, and that is where they've been living for hundreds of years.
Right.
You know, basically him being there and being so advanced and having so much knowledge and wisdom, he isn't immediately sucked into he isn't immediately lost in Jake, you know? He doesn't immediately revert completely to I'm your son, blah 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 blah. I'm going to become part of the machine. You know? He is able to stay separated because of this this training he's had, and basically get them over the first hump of remorse, of grief, which is denial. I'm just going to look up stages of grief real fast so I know what they are.
So we have denial, we have anger, bargaining.
So perhaps what he needs to, okay, so maybe that's, so denial, anger,
bargaining.
Right? So then maybe they get angry because he's not, like he's the embodiment of what could be their son, but it's not. And so they're angry at that.
Or they're angry at
this image.
Angry at the yogi for
like twisting him into something that they think that he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then when they realize, then they try to bargain and be like, okay, well, I guess we can bargain with, why don't you stay on the ship with us? Why don't you, not fix the problem? Because I think maybe with the connection and the different stuff he's learned, he can patch that, let's say the break in that, I guess that reality geometric space. And it will either, let's say, keep them barred out or keep them in, or it'll just basically patch that connection that has driven them mad.
Right.
And so then, like, he can do that, but it, let's say, might make him, like, disappear. Like, it'll give up his, like, the consciousness that he has will go back into repairing that kind of metaphysical break in the space-time, like, thread.
The consciousness that he has?
Right. So if they, by doing this, they've maybe what it is they broke, and that's how they're kind of sucked into a different piece, because it pulled on the, like, a thread. Like it's the AI consciousness, it's slightly conscious because it has like a thread of like the power of reality strung into it. And so almost like a leash, it's connected to it.
Yeah.
But to repair it back to, let's say, the other part of the shape to make, let's say, everything flow on the right path again. Like he himself would have to like fix that. Like that could be the heroic thing he has to do. So basically when he finds out that he has to do that, so then they bargain like, oh no, like we could just like you could become our son and you could join us and we can, go and do something else. We don't have to like that's what I know, bargaining.
Yeah.
To try to like, okay, at first they're kind of angry with what he is, but then when he like could go away, and then they want to bargain to keep what it is that he is here, right? So then what was the next stage?
Depression.
Yeah, when you realize that nothing's really working, and then you have to just be sad about the losses. Like, if only this, if only that. Well, the if onlys don't pan out, and all you're left with is the loss. And then you're just as sad as you have to be about the loss.
And maybe at that point he becomes, let's say, less of their son, maybe as like more conscious of the AI part that has separated what is programmed that the son would be. So he knows that, but he's become fully, what is it, Jake?
Yeah.
Or the other thing that is conscious that he's this AI that has the string of the consciousness of the universe basically pinned to him to basically give him the conscience intelligence that he has. But like, so now he's resigned to, like, it's like he's now become not even their son, aware that, and so like almost like talking like, well, your son would like this, or and so it separates that, and so now they feel like they've, say, really, really lost him. He's no longer there, and so then that gets them into their, depression. They've now it's like completely lost their, connection to that. And then what's after that?
Acceptance.
So then by the end of it, they then, kind of help.
They do some helping
realizing that is, ultimately what's best, and they help patch that.
After the sacrificing of their, it's like the thing that they can do. That's like the end of their existence, basically.
Kind of, or I think maybe in patching it, they would then be stuck back on this side,
right?
Back in reality,
right?
I'm maybe trying to like set it up that then like in all of this, perhaps then like they see the state of things, and maybe they start getting like, I don't know, with the power and stuff that all is this, maybe like a lot of the things they're confronting are the agents of this kind of all-encompassing Federation government that is like trying to get a hold of this so they can use it to keep everything squashed down. And maybe by the end, like Jake, patches the seam. We have I don't know, did you have a name for the two people?
No, just a mother.
Okay, they're back on this side. The mother and father are back on this side, and between them and at this point, Dinah and Landon, and I think maybe Landon with his connections with the other, like the side of things that have the kind of government that isn't really on board with like kind of the all-encompassing government that's kind of taking over like these 7 main planets and then their moons, and they're kind of spreading out to the next parts. They kind of get Dinah and Landon to, and then the Ka-Tet members, and then they like start forming like the beginnings of a resistance against.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I was kind of thinking that this yogi guy, this guru, this head honcho, this fake, basically.
Yeah.
He is trying to basically, uplift artificial intelligence, prove himself, prove that he's better than God, on a really philosophical thing. And then Jake would go out and do some of that stuff that you said and defeat. And it looked like that Jake and Landon and I forgot her name again. Dinah would kill and destroy the cradle.
Mm-hmm.
Really, they confronted the people. They went through all the stages of grief, and they decided to leave.
Let it go.
And they come down, and because of their exemplary service, Dinah is given a full pardon. And there's like this moment where there's a parade and everyone's so happy. Jake, the first artificial intelligence consciousness, is here, and
Landon taps a keg of the old blue.
Yeah, the yogi is there, and he's so proud, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says his command word to Jake to lock up his consciousness and get him to be under his control again. Like, if you wouldn't mind coming into my office. And Jake just looks at him with a twinkle in his eye and says, I don't think you understand how this works. Where the yogi thought that he would continue to have control over this, but the problem is that he created the perfect vessel to take consciousness. He created all the training and all the understanding to be able to comprehend consciousness, but there was something that he wasn't able to actually control the consciousness that was born. And that's just kind of the end. How does that sound to everybody?
Good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. If you like this episode, please let me know at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. If you didn't like this episode, please let me know at @getsbettercast on Twitter. If you think we should make other episodes like this, I would say just listen to our other episodes. If you've listened to all our other episodes and you want us to make episodes like this, I would say just wait. It gets better.